the music. You will be inspired to think higher, realize your gifts. Join the music and Michelle, Gina. Turn this up and through your speakers is the music of music.
And we are the muses behind the music. Welcome. I am your host, Michelle Fowlin. And I tell you, I have really been looking forward to this conversation with my friend, minister, the Reverend, I should say, gospel musician extraordinaire. I used to tell her all the time that, hey, listen, I need you to give me organ lessons. There's something so beautiful about the way that she plays a Hammond. Oh my goodness. And a very fierce LGBTQ plus advocate. And I think this conversation is so necessary as we both are a part of the church. And we recognize that there are so many things that the church is still not willing to embrace. And not necessarily that you have to believe as such, but it's a matter of showing love and care and concern for those who are vastly different from us, who are a little bit different from us, don't think the same. You name it, just a mirage of differences. Then that's what colors us. That's what makes us all so completely beautiful. And I think it shows the rainbow of God's love and light to us. But we do have to get into heavier conversations about, what that looks like. How do we challenge ourselves to be more accepting of certain things and people who might not share those same beliefs. So we're going to have a great conversation today as it's necessary and needed. But I want to share with you all just a little bit of Diedre. I met her years ago when I initially started working with the Washington Performing Arts Children of the Gospel, and she was one of the directors and organists, musicians that was on board, and was just phenomenal, like I shared with you. But Diedre comes out of Omaha, Nebraska. I don't know if she remembers that when I met her, I was like, what is in Nebraska? How many Black people do we have in Nebraska? But I say that for any kind of state that I really don't know and understand. But that is where she is hailing from. And she likes to call herself a true Midwest girl living on the East Coast. She began her beginnings with a strong Christian value in her upraising of her parents in the home. Parents were music directors and the organist of the music ministry at that church. So not only did it come in the genes, but it was cultured in her as well. And then eventually she decided that she was going to move into the DC region, where she met so many of the great DMV locals, but they are known both internationally and nationally, like Patrick Lundy and Thomas Dixon Tyler, Philip Carter, Henry P. Davis, and Wallace Charles Smith. And she really was able to branch out and grow her gifts all the more with working with these musical geniuses of the gospel genre. And after years of soul searching and pursuing a deeper spiritual understanding of herself, the creator, and life as a whole, Diedre accepted the beautiful revelation of who she was in her soul and has always been. In 2016, after being outed, she decided to embrace her journey and in turn share with the world that she is a Black transgender woman. And I must say, and hopefully we'll talk a moment about this too, that when I had actually read what I considered the coming out on in the public social media realm, the first words that I said was, good for you. And as long as you have resigned it with you and God, that's all that matters. And that was also in conversation with others who, had their thoughts and opinions and whatever else on it. But at the end of the day, it's us who has to rest with it and not anybody else. And since then, Ms. Diedre has embraced an even greater experience as the first openly transgender person to be hired by the DC Health Department. She served as DC Transgender Health Coordinator. That's a big to do. That's awesome. In addition to becoming an ordained reverend, she produced and released her first single entitled My Life Matters as both a response and call to action regarding the violence against and murders of transgender women of color. In 2022, Diedre founded her nonprofit, Auntie's Home, with the goal to provide housing for trans and gender diverse people experiencing homelessness. I love that. Thank you so much, because we here in a country who we're doing a lot of different things with our money, but we are forgetting the homeless. Ugh, can't understand that. In addition, she started her music company, Gray Rose Music, named in honor of her mother, who is still an influence to her, even though she passed away in 2020. I'm just so elated to have a friend, Reverend gospel musician, LGBTQ plus advocate, Miss Diedre Gray. Hello, my friend.
Hey Boo, how you doing?
I am doing so well, and I can tell you that I am elated to have you. Thank you for agreeing to do this show, to which I think is going to be a beautiful conversation to educate people and to help them understand a little bit more about you, about the community that you serve, that we all serve as human beings walking together on this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the invite. I'm
Yeah.
glad to be in different spaces and to not just share my story, but to encourage folks to be open-minded,
Hmm.
different walks of life.
Yeah.
You don't have to understand it. There's so much we don't understand about life, but we do it anyway. So, I'm just glad to be in this space. So let's get into it.
Ain't that a good point? Yes, so much we don't understand, but we do it anyway. So let's get into who you are. Like, what I know that I read to everybody about the upbringing in the church, but I always want to know: is there anything more than gospel music that you wanted to do? Did you even desire music, or was that kind of like pushed on you? You know how our parents can prod us into areas.
Well, I used to call us, my family, we were the Omaha, Nebraska version of the Jacksons. It was six of us. Everybody had to do an instrument, all the different type of stuff. And I enjoyed it, but it was pushed on me to do. And I was okay with that. I was comfortable with that.
Mhm.
Being the youngest of the six, it was impressed upon me early on that there were certain responsibilities and expectations, and I was okay with that. That
Mhm.
didn't bother me too much. Um, and I think in to a certain extent, um, to your specific question about did I ever want to do other music, no, but it was the fear of doing other music.
Uh,
Always had that thing in my head. If you play in the club, God gonna take your gift away.
Mercy.
And so, what's funny about that is my brother, who was like my big music mentor growing up, he was an R&B producer. So he lived in Atlanta,
Mhm.
and when I was in my teenage years, for about 5 years straight, I would go down and visit him. And he had me just in the studio writing songs, recording songs. And then, I would go back home and he would send, this is what I did. And baby, it was that after midnight music. And I loved every minute of it because I didn't do that. I was just playing a song. I just had an idea, but he put his ATL on it, and it came something else. But I never had the desire to do other music. And even in the early stages of being out in my transition, there
Mm.
was a space where I didn't want to do music at all.
Mm.
there was just so much there was so much I had to resolve within myself about who am I? Because I didn't think I could be a church musician,
Mm.
not just because of the church saying we don't want you here per se, but also I didn't see myself as just a church musician anymore. I had spent so
Right.
much of my life trying to be that person. I was just like, but I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
What does it look like now? So, you know, yeah.
So coming up and being raised in the church, how young were you that you felt this is different? I feel something different.
Probably around 5, 6.
Wow.
I mean, there's, you know, sometimes you hear people, a lot of times you hear people, parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, they're too young to know.
Mm.
You know, I have learned down through the years that kids know if they like ketchup. They know if they like mustard. They know if they like hot dogs. They know if they like chicken. It's not it's not a big revelation. It's pretty clear for them.
Mm.
Adults make it, you know, cloudy because we have all the stuff that society tells us and religion tells us and community tells us and family tells us. Kids just they're like this is what it is, and they don't bring all that other stuff to it. And when you say, well, they're confused, the confusion is you're trying to make me fit into a box that doesn't fit. And
Mhm.
so the confusion is I don't know why I don't fit in your box. I want to fit in your box because I want to please you, mom. I want to make you happy, granddad, but it doesn't fit. But I'm gonna try to do it because that's what you want me to do. But
Do
they
you
know.
do you think that your family knew? Were there things that you were doing that your family was like, "Hold up, pause on that," or nothing? There was nothing that was okay.
I worked so hard. Just about everybody that I've talked to, family and not family, they've more or less said the same thing. They were shocked and they don't understand. I probably say there were two people that I actually told about the internal struggle
Mhm.
because I worked so hard to be what I thought people wanted me to be.
Yeah.
So I literally put energy into thinking how I walked, how I moved my hands, how, you know, just everything. Did it look masculine enough? Did it look too feminine? Did it have this attached to it? Would people guess? Because I was trying to keep it hidden. I was trying to keep it secret.
Mhm.
Some folks interpreted that as, well, you were trying to trick us. No, I was trying to fit in. I was trying to be accepted. So I was, again, to what I said earlier, kids know
Yeah.
everything that you do as a result, you're trying to fit in because you don't want to be looked at, you don't want to be pointed out, you don't want to be made fun of. But there was a space that I experienced that anyway, and it was a question of, are you ready to just go ahead and embrace it? And it took me a while. For me, it took a while to embrace it and just be, you know, people gonna say what they say, whatever.
So you mentioned in when I was reading the bio that you were outed.
Mhm.
What took place, if you're open to speaking about that, in the being outed?
Sure. So the person I was with at that time, you know, I was open as I could be from day one. And I've kind of been that way, just any type of intimate relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, um, you know, we could be a serious situation. Let me be upfront and let you know what's what before we get too far down the road. So with this particular individual, you know, I shared my understanding of where I was in my journey, and I thought we were on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
We were in relationship, and they were having an experience of they didn't know how to deal with people coming to them. Because now I'm taking risks. I'm taking little steps, baby steps, because I may not have been able to articulate it early on, but I know something's going to have to give now. And so I'm taking little steps. And so people are coming to her and they're saying, well, you know, what's going on? What's happening? And as she explained it to me, she got tired of the questions, and so she just decided she was gonna put it out there. This is what's going on. I'll never forget it. It was in March, and it was in the morning, and in that afternoon, I had to put my post up, and it was just like, okay, this is the new reality.
Wow. Was that the post that we were privy to, that I read, that you basically were saying in it, listen, I've come to this space in my life. Don't write me back and tell me about praying for me because I'm good. I loved that. I got to tell you, I love that because I knew that you were about to get a whole heap of church folk that were about to tell you all about, God, this, and I'm doing this, and I'm praying for this and this and that. And I appreciated that response. Was that post you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what most folks don't really comprehend, and this is not about being trans, this is about being any identity that doesn't fit the quote unquote norm, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Once an individual decides to let the world know, first of all, number one, there seems to be this thought that the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God that knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb didn't know that we were fill in the blank. And the only revelation that God knew, the creator found out, was when you found out. And so you kind of have to sit and be like, well, I didn't know you were that close with God. But since you are, could you reach out and see if I can get a little pay raise? Can I get a little insight about how to make some more money? Because you seem to have an in.
Right. That I
So,
don't have.
right. So I say that facetiously, but I say it seriously because that's how people were talking to me.
Hmm.
And I had to just let them know, you know, I didn't just end up here. Like this has been 30 years at that time, 30 plus years of question and my own praying and my own depression and frustration and breaking down crying and just on and on and on. Like I've been wrestling with this for a while, not because is it right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
wasn't the question.
Hmm.
The question for me was, do I have the strength to endure people saying it's not?
Oh, mercy. Oh, ooh, that's so good. You know what? It's not just in your transition, but I think that point that you just made, people battle with that more than they will say. I don't care what the issue, the challenge is. It's, do I really have what it takes to endure what's about to come at me from other people? Like, I'm solid with this space, but I still know that I have to deal with the outside world. That's so good. That was a sermon right there. And somebody needed to hear that, if not, but for me. And so, in that, how did you deal with that? That this individual who, you know, I can only imagine, Diedre, the space of vulnerability. I look at a lot of the students that I have, that I know, who are out in all facets, of that. They're gay, or they, are transgender, or they. Do we even still say like cross dressing? How does that work? I'm really, really not. Um, on par like I should be. Although I teach high school students, they still don't keep me on par with that. They try their best, but I don't. But they're all going through their various, um, points in life, in the journey of it. And if they were only able to share that and to know that bit of information, how do you talk to others who are in that space, the young ones?
Well, I'm gonna give you a little bit of cultural competence, and then I'm gonna answer your question.
Hmm.
So when we talk about labels and names and titles, right?
Yeah.
They're constantly evolving and growing. And especially for this generation, like they they change names and change labels like we change months on the calendar. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
it's just never going to really get there. But cross-dresser is really in a space that is by definition more of a sexual thing that's happening. So you tend to have folks that would identify as being heterosexual, but they enjoy dressing in a as a different gender identity.
Okay.
You have transvestite, which would be an old term, which is typically not used, it's not acceptable nowadays.
Hmm.
Fine, you know, I would say my generation, I ain't gonna say yours, generation who might use that term because that was what it was back in the 70s and before. But now from really the 90s forward, and really in the 2000s, you really saw the evolution of the term transgender as being a more accurate thing, because transvestite oftentimes is associated with a medical transition. So there's some type of medical thing that happened.
Mm.
And so that is the strict medical definition, but then that's the cultural definition. And then obviously, like we said, we get to transgender, which is much more representative of I think a fair mixing of anything medical, anything social, anything cultural, that is more than one gender coming together. And let me say this, let me put a pin before I get to the second part of your question.
Mhm.
I speak for myself and what my experience is. And I don't want it to be characterized, well, Diedre said this, so that must mean all trans folks feel the same way. Not necessarily. This is just what my experience is, because we're not monolithic. It's just like Black folks are not one color.
Mhm.
Women don't necessarily all feel the same way about going to work or staying at home. You have a variety. You have a broad variety, particularly when you start adding in all the elements like cultural experience, what generation they were raised in, all these different elements. It really changes how one person can feel compared to another person. So I'm just articulating what my experience is. And I try to listen to people. So when I have the opportunity to bring voice about what others have experienced, I can do so, but I don't speak for the community as a whole.
Got you. Yes. Mhm.
And
Makes sense.
to your second point, when you talk about speaking with young people, statistics show that 40% of young people that would identify as LGBT have attempted suicide at some point. And over 60% would, if they just had one person
Mhm.
who was a supporter, was an ally, was there for them, they've said that they would not even attempt it. They just need one person.
That's it.
Just one person. And so, I think what happens, because I don't know if when I reflect back and I think back through my teaching years and anything prior, I can see there were moments that I made conscious decisions. As a musician, right, in
Mhm.
Black church in particular, there's always the joke about the gay choir director. Like
Mhm.
that's just the running joke, right? And I can go back to my teenage years and think about how I said I made a conscious decision. I'm not going to join in with those jokes. That doesn't work
Mhm.
for me.
Yeah.
Like something doesn't feel right about that. And I couldn't articulate what the details were. But my point being that I don't know if there were times, I'm sure there were, because I'm a human being, but there were times that I could have been more kind to
Mhm.
young people to make that space. I know as I got probably halfway through, for sure, to the end of my teaching career, I was very intentional about trying to make as safe a space as possible, just period, for whatever the reason.
Mhm.
One of the things I was always, I guess I'll use the word proud, is that I had, special ed kids that were in my classes. They wanted to come to my class. They wanted to be in my class. So I
Mhm.
had a special relationship with that program coordinator. And we would always have, just, she knew that she could come to me because I was going to make sure that they were safe and protected.
Mhm.
So I hope that I created that atmosphere with any young person, period. And we've had conversations about being in some spaces where we've been around folks that went after kids. And I've never understood that. I see there's this thing that happens in Black culture. I don't know if this is still the term, so I'm really aging and dating myself. But when I was a kid, we called it cracking on each other.
Right.
When I moved out here, they called it joning on each other. I don't know if that's still what they say, but
Yep.
this thing that you do about, you pick out something of this person standing in front of you and you use it to put them down,
Yeah.
whether it's their nose, it's their hair, it's their skin color, it's their parent, their family situation, they don't have money, on and on and on and on. We do that in our culture. It feels like more so than other cultures do.
Yeah.
And so there's this acceptance of, and I believe very much it's a protective thing. I'm going to get you before you get me, because if I
Yep.
get you before you get me, you can't get me because I got you first.
That's right.
That Medea mentality, right? And so it was never okay for adults to do that to kids, in my opinion.
Absolutely not.
So what I hope is that I've been able to create spaces, I've been able to hold space, and I've been able to bring voice to those wherever they are, because I always felt like this. If I treat you like a human first,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a good shot of meeting the other stuff. But
Amen.
but see, kids know. If
Ah,
nothing else, kids know.
period.
You ain't that one. You know, ain't nothing you can do to make it. Kid will do it because you threaten them. You
Yep.
gotta do this because I said so. But their hearts aren't in it.
So this vulnerable space, because I get it too as an educator that it's always jam packed, and I always think that us as arts teachers too, you know, we do it so naturally with the music, and then they feel comfortable enough to come into the space for other needs and necessities, but you have this directly at home feeling like you could feel vulnerable, and then the vulnerability was literally just like knocked upside how did you handle that? How did you recover from that?
That's a really good question. And what I did was I made a decision of who was going to be in my life.
Hmm.
And I stopped trying to convince people that I was worthy of you. And I flipped it around and said, you need to understand that you need to be worthy of me.
Yes.
So, um, what's the old saying, unconditional love?
Yeah.
I just flipped the mentality. No, I have a lot of conditions.
Wow.
You're gonna have to do a lot. You're gonna have to
Wow.
do a lot. Because if you call me your friend, if you call me your sister, if you call me your mentor, if you call me your whatever, and I have to spend time defending myself, convincing you of this, that, and the third, then are you really any of those things?
Right.
And
Right.
understand that went for family, that went for professional associates, that went for random people walking up and down the street.
Hmm.
Because what I have come to experience, my life has been on the line in a couple of situations
Wow.
where a person came at me because they clocked me
Wow.
and there was a threat that happened. And so in that moment, I'm not here to negotiate with you about my life.
I know that's right. Right.
That's not what this conversation is. And so some people they're like, well, you need to be more of this. And I'm like, no, you need to be less of that. I need you to get that. Your your argument with me is that I am too defensive, but I've put the mirror back on you and say, well, why are you so abusive?
You are. Oh, wow. That's a
Like,
shocking word to
yeah,
use,
yeah,
but it's a truthful word to
it's
use for
true.
people. Yeah.
See, the abuser never wants to be called the abuser. They want to be excused and forgiven. But if you're verbally assaulting me, if you're creating a safe space for me, see, there's this thing called emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And people know when they walk in the room, when they get around you, there's something that happens. And there's this falseness that it only happens with women. But cis women, cis men, trans men, non-binary, two-spirit, all of us have a capacity to be around somebody and say, "Oh, I don't like that person."
Mm.
You're not even in a conversation. You just watching how they move.
Hmm.
You're like, something don't seem right.
Hmm.
And then what happens is either they prove that they don't deserve your trust, they confirm it, or they deny it.
Yeah.
And so I just sit back and I wait. You and I connected, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. I think I
Hmm.
texted you or I called you or something. And I was floored because I didn't know how you were going to respond.
Mm.
I thought there was going to be a continuation of experiences that I had with other people, and you didn't respond that way.
Yeah.
So why would I not want to hold space that when Michelle Fallon reaches out and says, "Hey, can you? Are you sure? Let's go."
Yeah.
You have presented yourself as a safe space, and it's not about you not making a mistake. It's not about you being perfect around me. It's not that. It's that you have shown the vulnerability that I can be vulnerable, and you won't take advantage of that.
Yeah. I
So,
appreciate that because
so I
that is
appreciate.
very important to me, as I'm certain that it would be on the flip side. I remember when we ran into each other in a restaurant, before the conversation we had, and I remember when we ran into each other in a restaurant before, the conversation we had, and I went up and I embraced you and I was with my kids and, and that was the very first time that they had seen you. And you were like, if they have questions, I'm open. Please tell them to come and ask. And, that takes a lot too, to know that people knew one aspect of you. They're experiencing something new. The world is shifting. We've all got these different things coming at us, and you were in a space where now you're saying, hey, I'm so okay with who I am and I'm ready to educate folk about it. And that's just, to me, that's it. It's let's get a little bit more educated on what this is. Talk to me about your journey. I love building relationships with people, and I'm very cautious about the people who I bring into any part of my circle, whether it's the outer circle or it's the inner sanctum. I'm very, very careful and probably a little bit on the defensive. And so I get that, because I take the word friendship and the beauty of that word to heart, to the depths of heart. So I appreciate that being a safe space. We're both church musicians. We're both raised in the church. I consider the church to be, mentally, I consider the church to be the space that people should feel the most comfortable about going into and being themselves, although I know that the church is not. How was that experience for you? Because this is where sometimes we as musicians, this is our bread and butter. We make our money as being church musicians. And some people are ready, some people are not ready. Although, here's part two of the question, we have a lot of people who are gay in the church, and they're okay with them being gay, but not trans anything. You can't do that. What was the experience like for you?
So it wasn't a good experience.
Mm.
Without going into specific, who, this, that, and they, it was not a good experience. And that was another one of those birthing moments that happened for me of, church life versus Christianity versus my relationship with the Creator. And those became very, very separate and individual components.
Amen.
And so, different people land where they land with religion. I'm not going to get into that. I'm good with where I am with that. But when you talk about the professional capacity of it as a musician, as a church musician, I had gotten to a certain place, dollars and cents, and that went away very quickly. And it was a shock. It was a shock. I was doing okay.
Yeah.
Girl, I was doing okay. All right. But part of what I had to realize, and this was a part of what the journey was, which, let me say this, one of the moments that happened, I had been praying, I had been really, really wrestling with where to go with this thing. And I wasn't out, I was still teaching. I had a small, intimate circle of people that I was sharing particular elements of my journey with. And I literally was crying out to God. And I was like, God, something's going to have to give, because I'm either going to check out or something else is going to have to take place. And I very, very strongly, and I say this whenever I have the chance, I really heard the voice of God say, well, if you trust me, then don't worry about it. I got you.
Yeah.
And once that moment happened, all the other stuff became okay.
Yeah.
So the people, the job opportunities. I had one musician friend who literally said, well, if you wore pants, I could get you a gig at a church. That wouldn't be a problem.
Wow.
And they meant it like sincerely, like earnestly. They weren't trying to be shady. They were like, I could work it out for you, no problem. And there's a space of compromise. See, a lot of churches have all are welcome, and they really do mean that, because they want your money. They want the numbers. Like, They want to grow. That's
I'm laughing because you're talking truth in there. It does come down to dollars and cents versus souls, which is bothersome to me, but that's another conversation. Continue. I'm so sorry.
well, I think if churches would be honest and say we want your money and we want to save your soul,
Mm.
that would see. This is very controversial, so I gotta be careful.
Lay it out. Lay it out.
A lot of people give this bait and switch thing. It's this whole, did you have an encounter with the Lord? Did you shout? Did you speak in tongue? Did you fall out? Oh, you're filled with the Holy Spirit. Oh, you've been changed. Well, if I was changed and I shouted and I spoke in tongue, but I'm still attracted to this gender,
Right.
or I still feel this inside me, and you keep saying that it's not. And now what you're doing, when you say I can bring all of me into the space, when I finally do I can't be a hoe and come in church. I can sit in the pews. Let me fix that. I can sit in the pews, but I can't lead the solo.
Right.
Don't ask me to be in leadership. Don't ask me to be on the deacon board. Don't ask me to be the choir director. I can't do those things. So you don't want all of me. You want the things, the parts of me that are of benefit to you. And so I feel like if that was a more transparent message, then people would come. It's like when you go and sign up for a bank account, when you get a new phone, when you got your cable, they told you the terms of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
And then now most of us don't read the terms of the contract, but at least they put it out. Yeah, I'm with you too. I just flipped to the last page and put
right.
What's today's date?
Right. Exactly.
But if they would put the terms of it, then we would have an understanding that, oh, you are going to judge me when my child comes up pregnant at 13. Oh, you are going to say something about me when my wife cheats on me with the deacon and wants to leave me. Or you are going to say something about me when I come out, I have HIV. Or you are going to say something about, like, if we understood that, if that was a part of the orientation, right? Those 6 months of orientation we got to go through, us would be in a very different place.
Yeah.
But there's this expectation placed on that if you ain't holy enough, if you ain't righteous enough. And the truth of the matter is, again, I said it earlier, folks are acting like when I found out about something is when God found out about it.
I love that point because I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone or we've ever really dealt with that because we in the religious Christianity world always say, well, God knew what he was doing when he made you. Well, then the depth is if God knew, it wasn't just me who came up with this, God knew. Like we never talk about what you just said. And maybe it's so much fear. I feel so much of this is based on fear. A 5-year-old says, who was born a boy says, Mommy, I feel different. I feel like I'm a girl. You don't know what you're talking about. When, like you said, the whole example of ketchup and mustard. And they do because the parents, though, want to shake it out because of fear, them not having understanding. And so this is why it's so important to me to have conversation about this, the differences that are there. So when, you come and you say, I have always felt in my soul that I was woman, how do you paint the picture to someone to get them to understand what that means to you? And I don't mean by any means that you can force a person to understand this. It's either that they do or they don't, but at least give them something that they can think on that says, this is what it looked like. It felt like to me, it outside of the norms that I knew. This is who I am.
So great question. First, I would say, I don't take the approach of you don't want to understand, so I'm going to make you believe what I believe. I try to operate in the space of, if you want to learn, if you want to have conversation, if you want to share, I'm all for it. Scripture says, don't argue with a fool. So I can't argue with you. You believe what you believe, and it's okay for you to do that. Like for real. There's I don't throw shade because you don't believe in trans folks. Okay, I mean, I'm right here, but I don't exist because you don't see me. I guess that's what you want to say. That's fine. That's what you feel. But for the people that are like, I do want understanding. I want to understand my cousin. I want to understand my brother. I want to understand my auntie. Like that's a space that I come from. So I like to describe it, and if you grew up in spiritual spaces or religious spaces, almost across the board, there's this description of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Three. You talk about one omnipotent being, but three components that make the creator who the creator is, right? We see that in the New Testament talks about in earth as it is in heaven. So there's some duplication and replication that takes place in the spiritual realm as well as in the natural realm on this plane,
Absolutely.
right? So if you're telling me that Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three in one, we see that in some places in nature. Probably one of the best examples would be an egg. You've got the shell, you've got the yolk, and you've got whatever you call that white part, whatever that is.
Embryo.
So I like to see us as human beings because I see it in scripture, I see it in society, I see it in medicine. We are three parts.
Yeah.
We are spirit. When you go to church, the whole thing is about your soul salvation. God knows your soul. You see that we're taught that over and over. So that's 1/3, your soul. I see your mind. We have psychiatrists, we have therapists that deal with the mind. We have evaluated and studied the mind. Scripture talks about putting on the mind of Christ.
Yeah.
So we see 2/3, and then we have body, which is the only part of the three that we can see. So for me, when I have the conversation, I need to articulate so you can process it and conceive what I'm saying. There's a third, and a third.
Yeah.
You can only see 1/3 of what makes me who I am.
Yeah.
And people will be like, well, I don't want, that'll make no sense. Well, do you go to church? Why do you go to church? Are you going to church to save your body, or are you trying to save your soul?
Right.
So right there, you can't say that. You got to believe that on some level. That's why you're going. But then if you see a therapist or you know somebody in your family that's crazy, we don't like to use that term. They got psychological issues, whatever. There's something with the mind. I mean, LeBron James got an app making how many millions of dollars called Mind.
Ain't that something?
Called Mind. But we can't conceive that when it comes down to whether your sexual identity or your gender identity, that third, and third could still apply.
Yeah.
So I see 1/3, the physical that you can see. I can see your physical body. You can see my physical body, but I can't see your soul and I can't see your mind.
That is so deep. Like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself about just, running into people in general from like this point on and thinking about those 3 points. Like all I do see is just you, but I haven't seen you in totality. And what can I do as an individual to make sure that I'm more aware of that, being open. It's all important to me. Yeah.
I just wanted to add on what you're saying. That's why people have bad relationships.
Yes, absolutely.
I saw the 1/3. Oh my God, you are so fine.
Yep.
You are beautiful. Oh, I just want to be in your I want to drink champagne out your shoes. All that type of talk, whatever, right? But then you spend 5 minutes around and be like, you just a mean person.
Yeah.
And you can't talk.
And absolutely. I can't take you nowhere.
Nowhere. No. Why you act that way all the time?
That's
Why
real.
you do this? Why you do that? But I see your physical. I keep looking at you and I keep saying, well, they are sexy, so I'm gonna let it go. But you keep getting these cues and these signs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for some reason, if you think that the 2/3 is going to be less than the 1/3, that's why you have suicidal thoughts, ideations.
Yeah.
That's why you have broken relationships, because the 1/3 is trying to be the majority. It's not. It can't. That's why you have relationships where the spouse is cheating, because the 1/3 is trying to be dominant, and the 2/3 are saying something ain't right. It's
Yeah.
not working for me. It doesn't sit well with me. But to your point of how do we hold that space? If we treat people, give them the opportunity to be who they are. Who's that Martin Luther King that said, when a person tells you who they are, believe them? Well,
Yeah.
I want to see your actions of who you are as much as I want to hear your voice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. The church gets an F to me for its ability to accept you and others in general, who are different than the norm. And I put that in big old quotes because I don't know what normal looks like. What are you doing to help to bring awareness to others who are dealing with the same thing that you did, specifically in the church, so that they find the safe space? You create your own church? What do you do?
Well, that's a good option. And I mean that in all seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the thought process that I went through was, do I need to make my own church? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'm not a pastor, so that's not what I'm going to do. But I did find that there are churches that are called opening, welcoming, and affirming churches. And I decided to partner with a few of them, but one in particular that I play at on the regular. I'm not a member. I would never join a church. I would not identify as a Christian directly. I would identify as a spiritual person
Mm-hmm.
because for me, it's not the religion, it's the relationship.
Yeah, period.
The religion gives you rules and guidelines and do this and do that. And if you do this, there's going to be this consequence. Relationship says, you know what, you did that, but I love you anyway. So let's just move forward.
Yeah.
You give a 3-year-old rules. You tell them, don't touch the stove. You tell them, go take your bath. You tell, a 12-year-old, be in before the lights come on, because they need the structure.
Mm-hmm.
But scripture talks about, when I was a child, I behaved as a child, but when I became an adult, I took
Put
off
it away.
childish
That's right.
nature and I became more responsible to that adult calling. And
Yeah.
so the relationship, if we put it in like our everyday societal terms, when you are 17 and younger, you're not responsible for your actions. Theoretically, you're not responsible for your actions. Your parents are held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But once you turn 18, for the rest of your life, do something stupid and see what happens.
Right. You're held.
Come on now. So it's the same thing. I see that kind of, again, in heaven as it is in earth, right? I see that as a similar thing in our spiritual journey. When you become a mature person in your faith walk, the rules, okay, yeah, I get them. There are consequences. I understand that, but I'm taking the responsibility for them.
Yes.
It doesn't,
Period.
this is any less than mean the blood don't cover, it don't mean all that stuff. That's cute. That
It's cute.
sells records. It sells records. I get it. I understand. I hear you. I hear you. But the relationship with your creator, whatever New Testament talks about, the God of your understanding.
Mm,
So there is an understanding that is not one. It's just how you understand who God is.
yeah.
So if I'm following a certain religion, I'm following somebody, I always laugh at the point, and I know we're getting close to our wrap time for today,
Mm-hmm.
but I always thought it was hilarious. I used to get into arguments. My mother, she was a Bible scholar. She went and got, she studied religion and all stuff like that. And I would ask her, Mom, how do we have the King James Version, but that's the whole version because the scriptures say don't take anything away and don't add anything to it. But it literally said this is James's version.
Right.
And she was like, baby, don't ask them kind of questions. That like, well, okay, I won't come at you that way because I don't want you to cuss me out. But I got to the place of doing that for real and saying this is literally King James's version, which happened to coincide with the printing press. So Guggenheim's
That's
Bible
right.
came into existence at the same time this mass communication device happened. And so you then tied that to the Crusades, which now you have this group of people who want to go across the world and threaten you, either accept our God or die. Which one am I going to go?
Which one? I'm going to go with the accept. Okay.
all the way to where there were strict instructions written by slave owners and slave masters of how to convert Black Africans away from our spiritual
That's right.
roots to believe to believe their traditions and their philosophies, which ultimately put us in this place where as people of color, whereas any minority, whereas any people that were of a lower financial status, you could not have a say in what your relationship with the creator looked like.
Yep.
Do it our way or you're out the
Or the
club.
highway. I like to say religion is slavery, relationship is freedom.
Come on now.
Yeah,
Go
because
past.
that's jump up, look, we'll take that, throw that out. No, but it really is. I mean, it. I got to a place a long time ago because I grew up with parents who were very religious, and their whole thing, no matter when you had questions, it was like it could be questions about the historical Bible itself. The Bible, don't ask questions. You don't question God. Everything was, it wasn't questioning God versus what is actually truly wrong with me asking questions, because that's that lock into you believe because you believe. And I had a hard time with that. I had to, go on my own journey and discover and almost branch out into other religions in itself, because I thought that that was the way that it should be, that everybody needs to be called something religious instead of building relationship with the creator, with nature, with one another. Like, it's the God in me, Mary said, right? We all were born and birthed with that, and that's what I'm trying to do, get to know the God within me. You came out with this song. How did that come about? Because I think you have a video that I watched. You sent it to me. Is that the same song? You sent this a while ago. And it was absolutely beautiful, but your songwriting, you're a composer, an arranger, just an all-round awesome musician. What are your plans with that? How do we get that into the hands of other people, into the listening ears of people? Where did that birth itself from?
Well, first, thank you for the props. I hold you in
It's serious.
high
Thank
esteem.
you.
We have been both been able to share spaces with amazing musicians
Yeah.
and professionals within the industry, et cetera, et cetera. So, the song's called "My Life Matters," and it's birthed out of the trans experience, a lot of deaths, a lot of murders, but it's really a song that's a call to action and a celebration of what the journey is. And so it's available. You can see the video on YouTube. It's available on all major platforms. It can be
All
done.
right.
Please go and buy my little song. I think it's a good song. It's got a little bit of the gospel church in it, and that's just part of who I am. And but amazing singers, amazing participants in the video from community. We have folks all the way from California who participated and actually putting the video together. So that was a wonderful opportunity to grow. And I think to what you were saying also, there is this space of pushing back, of asking questions and being okay with the fact that we can ask the creator questions.
Absolutely.
We can write a song that is challenging. We can write a poem. We can write a book. We can protest. We can just hold conversations. We have roundtables. We can do all these different things so that conversation happens because somebody is trying to understand.
Yes.
And the powers that be, they may not want that. They want you just to dwell in ignorance. But through shows like yours, through efforts like yours, we're not going to stay in ignorance. Now you might choose as an individual. That's totally your right. But the information is out here, whether it's understanding gender better, whether it's understanding music better, whether it's understanding religion better, whatever it is that you want to understand, they got a course for everything.
Don't they? A video, a course, anything, it's right at your fingertip.
It really is. So when I meet people who say, well, I just don't understand it. Why? It's 2022. The only reason you don't understand because you've chosen not to take 5 minutes. Like I remember having to go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System to look something up. I know some folks don't even know what that is. They think
That's right.
They think that's some cartoon or something. No, it's not a cartoon. I promise you it's not. And then I remember the beginning of stuff being online. You can look stuff up. And you had to be careful because if you put in the wrong name, there'd be something that you didn't want on your computer pop up. But now you can just open your phone up and in 10 seconds,
It's there.
you can look up anything to have a better understanding. Stop saying, I don't know. Stop saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't have to, like, Michelle, I feel this in my heart. You don't have to accept me. I don't need your acceptance. You will respect me.
Yes.
But equally as important, there's somebody in your life that just wants to be loved by you, and they're afraid to say something because of how you act, because you don't understand. Take the time, because you don't know what's happening. Nobody expected Will Smith to get up and walk down that stage.
Not a soul.
But somebody said something about his wife, and in that split second, he made a business decision.
You called it the business decision.
He said, this is how I'm going to deal with this. We don't
Right.
set people off. We don't know what will set people off.
Very true.
But there are so many folks that are carrying so many weights because of what society has said or family has said or whatever. You know, start taking some of those weights off people so we don't have to have so much violence. We don't have to have so much hurt. And we don't have to. You as a teacher in the classroom, part of why I had to step away from the classroom, I realized I was not in the space that I could be capable of supporting kids the way they need it, because they need it.
Oh, absolutely.
Need it.
Absolutely.
You put a post up not too long, maybe last week, 2 weeks ago. You said something, you were reposting somebody else. It said something to the effect, it's my responsibility to create a safe space for kids. I'm going to do it every day. I started crying.
Every day. Absolutely. It's a necessity. And this, you know, to the last point on this session is that you have a heart for kids, and being accepted, you know, as the first transgender woman for DC and working with their health department. That's a big to-do deal, because I again have the kids who are struggling with this, and the statistics are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And I have always firmly believed if they can share who they are with the family member, I think that the burden becomes a little bit lighter with everybody else, because at least they know that the safe space is taken care of. They can, you know, and then they'll figure out their path and how they're dealing with other people. What is something to the LGBTQ plus youth population who is listening in today, who is just trying to make a way? What is it that you could share with them to encourage them, to strengthen their journey? Any of that, what can you share with them?
I would first share the resource of the Trevor Project. It's an LGBTQIA plus youth crisis intervention service. So if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling suicidal, text them. You can call them. You can go on your computer or your tablet and reach out to them. I think they're a great physical resource. But then I would couple with that, understand that your journey might not get endorsed by other people. That doesn't make it a less valid journey. So find folks that are going to celebrate you, not tolerate you. That might mean family, that might mean friends, it might mean school folks, and it might not be a bunch of folks. And I know that's different than kind of what things are talked about today because of social media. You need to have a bunch of followers.
The Lord mercy. Yeah.
You might not have a bunch of followers. You might have 10 people. You're blessed. You get with those 10 folks and y'all take over the world.
Period. I like that. Celebrate, not tolerate, because that's a huge difference in there. It's the respect factor. I said to you before that I knew that this show would end up being a 2-part show, because there's so many other things that I need us to talk about. I need us to talk about, you know, in the music world, the church world, and how it is that we can start bridging gaps that are there, making people more aware. Because I've seen it in certain spaces, but, you know, in others it's not present. There are different things that people want to know. I got asked by several different people, can you talk about the various pronouns? Because people are trying to understand that too. And, there have been videos that have been posted on both sides. There's this one real popular one with Dr. Phil and this man who was just like coming out and saying, you don't get the option to call yourself a them. It's a powerful video to watch, but to talk a little bit more in depth about that. In your journey, where do you go from here? There are just so many different things that I think we need to expound on a little bit more to help educate and to encourage and to share with the world for whoever is designed to hear this message, that may they take and chew on it. Because it's like going to church for me. I go to church, everything that's said out the pastor's mouth, I ain't amening. I'm taking, and some of the things I might have to go back home and sit down and talk to God a little bit about it. But we chew what's not right, I'm gonna have to spit it out. The rest I'm gonna digest. And I appreciate this conversation because it has given me all the more food for thought. It's also allowed me to get to know you a little bit more, Diedre. I mean, that's been so important. I am really proud of you, and I'm proud that you can stand and be you and bump everybody else. That was really nice. That was churchy of me. And how they want to think and deal. You just go on and continue to be the dynamic musician that you are, that God has created you to be, and the support system for other people who might not have a voice or who are a little bit more afraid to utilize their voice as you have been able to do. Thank you so much for being a part of this show. I'm looking forward to us continuing it. And for those of you, don't forget to go on ahead and find the song on YouTube.
Yes, it's My Life Matters by the Love Movement.
All right.
My Life Matters that are out there, but you want the one by the Love Movement.
All right. My Life Matters by the Love Movement.
Yes.
I love that. And there's also an LGBTQ choir for young people. I don't know if you know about that, but I always get these mailings and they've come at my school and wanting to speak to a lot of the youth about it. And so I'm glad that there are various outlets for them. And I also want to share one more time the Trevor Project for young people who might need an ear to listen to. And it's just a great resource for you. Again, my friend, thank you. Know that in the next season, I need you to be present again so that we can extend on this conversation. All right. And to my muses who have joined us, thank you so very much. Until the next time, peace, blessings,